I hereby call to order the regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission for August 18th, 2021. Sherry, could we have a roll call, please?
Chair Colosy,
Here?
Vice Chair Nolan,
Here.
Commissioner Lottis,
Here.
Commissioner Trent,
Here.
and one vacancy.
One vacancy. And before we go any farther, I would like to thank Commissioner Jake Swift for his time. My only, and I appreciated that he had a different perspective as an electrical contractor from anybody else that's on the commission. My only regret is that with the pandemic and all, never actually had a live meeting with him.
That's true.
And I'm hoping that before too long, we can all see each other's shining faces again soon. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance going round and round. I think it's my turn. So if you'll all join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. And there's the picture. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Back to the gallery. Great. It's time for public communications. Is there anyone online or in the City Hall who wishes to speak about items of city business that are not on the agenda? Sherry?
Nobody here that wants to speak on not a special
On
item.
non-agenda items. Okay. Next, we have the consent item, the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for August 4th of this year. Any commissioners have refinements to the minutes? They looked right to me. Then could we have a motion to approve? Vice Chair Nolan?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve the Ojai Planning Commission regular minutes from the regular meeting, excuse me, from August 4th, 2021.
Okay,
Second?
very good. Thank you. Any discussion? Then Sherry, could we have a roll call on the motion?
Colosy,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes?
Lottis,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Thank you all. Time for disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. I walked around the Rancho Inn site and actually spoke briefly with the man who's in charge there, I guess. One person called him the general manager. He called himself director of operations, just to find out exactly what space they were talking about in expanding the deck, because I didn't see a deck anywhere either. It was all concrete and tile. But that's my only ex parte contact. Vice Chair Nolan?
I'm familiar with both sites and had no ex parte contact.
And Commissioner Lottis?
Yes, same here. I'm familiar with the site and I've had no ex parte contacts.
And Commissioner Trent?
Same with me. Familiar with the sites, no ex parte contacts.
Terrific. Okay, let's go on to our first public hearing item then. Lucas, would you take us through that, please?
Certainly. Good afternoon, commissioners, audience here tonight. My name is Lucas Seibert, Community Development Director with the City of Ojai.
There you
Sorry,
go.
just got a title change. The item before you tonight is a public hearing item before the Planning Commission for consideration. It includes several things through a conditional use permit and a design review permit. First, let me just kind of break down the site itself. I'm going to give kind of an overview, and then the applicants are actually here virtually, and they'll give a little bit more detail as well. But the site itself is a 17-room, two-story hotel along the south side of Ojai Avenue, built in the circa 1950s. Had looked at the potential or possibility of expansion, never ended up doing the expansion. but recently had revisions through a director's exemption to allow for alcohol uses and for the Chief's Peak activation of that kind of pool room that you see that's there currently, kind of centrally located on the site itself. The first request for the applicant is expansion to the Chief's Peak outdoor seating expansion. That is the first request. The second request is for the inclusion and introduction of allowing both registered and non-registered guests to be located and to patronize the site itself. And the third request is the allowance for weekly, monthly, and annual events to take place. There has been basically a parking demand analysis and parking study / traffic study that was conducted. It was conducted by Mizuta Traffic Consulting. I believe Mark is actually on the call this evening as well to respond to any questions, provide additional feedback and clarification as they arrive or as they arise. As a result, staff is recommending approval of this project. There have been a number of conditions that have been added to it. As a part of a conditional use permit, it is discretionary. Simply applying for something of this nature is not guaranteed, requires specific review, findings, and in the event, in some cases, conditions. So what we have essentially is 49 overall conditions. 27 of those are specific to this proposal that we have before us tonight for review. With that, I would turn it over to the consultant, or not the consultant, but the applicant and their consultant, if they have any additional information to provide at this point. I'm just kind of providing a high level for this application and proposal. And I think we have Jonathan and Kenny on the call. But before we go there, if the commission has any questions of staff at this point early on in this review, I'm certainly available to respond to any questions, or we can wait for Kenny and Jonathan, even Mark, to further this presentation.
Well, I have several questions, but I think we can hold them until we get into deliberations.
I have questions as well, but I believe mine could easily be, I could wait
Okay.
till later on.
And I'll reiterate that as well.
Okay.
Yep,
Commissioner
same.
Trent?
Same here.
Very good. Okay. Well, let's have the applicant then, Sherry.
Is
Good
on.
evening, commissioners. This is Kenny, and Jonathan's with me too. So we've been in business at the Rancho since 2012, and we've been holding events there since then. It's been a staple amongst the community and people coming to Ojai to experience the culture that Ojai has to offer. Our philosophy as a business is to create experiences and spaces that bring community together. And the Rancho and Chiefs Peak does exactly that. People come to our property knowing that they will have the opportunity to interact with people from near and far. Attracting locals helps us stand out from other lodging options in town. People feel immersed in the culture when they stay at the Rancho and have a drink at Chiefs Peak because they get to hang out with people who live here. Let's see. It's a big draw for out-of-town guests, and the culture the locals create within our business helps us increase our overall room revenue. It's a win-win for guests and tourists as we bring diversity to the local landscape. Since 2012, we've had different agreements and verbal understandings with the various planning commissioners who have held office in the past 9 years. We're hoping today that we can resolve these issues in order to move forward with the health of our small independent business in mind as the number of hospitality options continue to grow in Ojai. So we're presenting to you here today to hope that we can resolve this and you guys can allow us to have these events that have been taking place for the last 9 years and have really helped us create an identity as a business. We've worked really hard to resolve the parking issues and noise issues. We have a decibel reader that we use to ensure that the noise doesn't go past 65 decibels outside of the property. And we've also created contracts with 3 other parking structures within like a 500-foot radius to the Rancho. And so we have landlords that are willing to offer us the parking spaces that we need to fulfill for the CUP. And we are ready to have signage posted at our properties and the parking lots to ensure that all of our customers know exactly where to park, and we'll have staff at each event to direct the foot traffic and the traffic as well.
Okay, I see there's a Mark Mizuta present at the meeting. You're the person who did the traffic study?
I did the parking
I'm
analysis.
sorry, parking
Yep.
study.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, any questions from commissioners of the applicant or the applicant's consultant? Yes, Vice Chair Nolan.
I have several. This is in regards to the parking. You mentioned that you have contracts in place for the 3 parking properties with those property owners. Is that true?
Pending upon approval, but they're well aware of our needs and hours and days and the events that we'll be having.
So at this point, do you have like a letter or kind of a memorandum saying that they're interested? And I didn't believe I saw anything in our packet.
Right.
We do have emails and letters from the landlords confirming that they will sign the contracts.
And I'd step in here as well. They have submitted something to staff as a draft as a part of their parking agreement for those 3 sites. So yes, we have something in as a draft. And
From the 3 property owners.
from the property owners, correct.
Okay.
The other parking lot owners, yeah, okay.
Okay. Good. Another question I had, and this was in regards to the St. Andrews Episcopalian Church property. If I'm understanding it right, it looks like you can use their lot all day Saturday and Sunday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are they no longer having a church service on Sunday there?
Hi, this is Jonathan speaking. Yes, they do. So we coordinated with the pastor there, and he said that after 6 o'clock would be the best time to do it, because then they've completed their service. I believe they have a certain program there as well, and I think we have a window of 2 hours between their last service or their last program before we can use the parking lot. So we're not overlapping.
Okay, so Sundays after 6. And then what about on Saturdays?
I don't think they have anything that would interfere with that. No.
Yeah, and the only reason I thought of it was I've attended funeral service there on a Saturday before, which you usually don't schedule too far in advance.
Right, kind of a pop-up thing.
Typically, yeah, and I just wondered if, that occurs, potentially it could. How would that affect or impact your parking on a Saturday if you were holding, let's just say, the annual event or one of the annual events which appear to have the most potential customers?
We would be sure to coordinate with all of the property owners on the date far in advance to ensure that those dates are available.
Yeah, and I guess my point was, in the event that I'm just using the St. Andrews for an example, if unexpectedly they're going to have a funeral on that date, would that mean you'd not be able to have your event, or is there a backup plan? I mean, that may not happen, but potentially it could.
I think that we would do everything we can to prevent that by coordinating with them in advance.
Okay. And then another question. So you're looking at having events potentially weekly, monthly, and then possibly 3 events annually. And then you list under the weekly, there's yoga and possible a film viewing or showing. I'm not right on that page right now, but I think there was a couple other items. Does it mean that you potentially in 1 week could have 1 yoga class, 1 film event, 1 meditation or whatever else, some other event, but those would be repeating once a week? Or would it just be one of those things once a week?
We usually have yoga once a week, and sometimes we'll have karaoke once a week. They're usually repeating, but they're very low impact.
Okay, so potentially, right now it sounds like you maybe only have 2. Could you have more? Like if you did, let's say once a week you did a film, showed a film. Would that be then a 3rd weekly viewing or a repetitive or repeating class or event?
I don't foresee us doing more than 3 events a week, but it's usually just 2 events a week for the sake of our staffing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess that the same goes in for the monthly one. Potentially, would you have just 1 thing that repeats once a month, or could it be many things, just like the weekly one, that repeat once a month?
Sometimes we'll do like a movie screening that's during the summers for 3 months, and that's once a month for 3 months. And then we might change that to a pop-up dinner for the next 3 months as a series. And then after that, maybe a painting or a clay workshop or something. So yeah, we'll change it up, but it'll just be 1 bigger monthly event per month.
Okay, so 1 event per month. Okay.
I think it's specified in the resolution that the more frequent the events, the smaller the crowd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the monthly one sounds like it might be bigger than the weekly one, if I'm looking at everything correctly.
Right, and the annual might be bigger than the monthly.
Yeah, because they have the
Exactly.
projected numbers. Okay.
So the weekly events are more like 10 to 15 people. The monthly events are more like 20 to 50. And then the annual events are more up to 150.
Okay. And then I know for the annual events, presently, I know you've been, I think almost every year, but maybe you've skipped a couple years, had like a holiday, fair, so to speak, in December-ish. And then it looks like you're saying, projecting that if you had 2 more, one of them could potentially be a fundraiser, and then the other, some other type of gathering. So it sounds as though is the holiday one is one that you would do every year. Are the other ones, is it kind of like 1 to 3 per year max?
Exactly. 1 to 3.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding everything correctly. And I did read through it, but it's just good to double check. Let's see. Oh, this was my other question, and it's about in the conditions of approval, you're asked to monitor the number of guests, and and have staff and direct them to the overflow. I'm just calling it overflow parking, but the other properties that would supply parking. And what are you expecting to do to monitor? What would be your monitoring, or maybe more than one system that you're proposing to monitor the amount of guests that are partaking in the potential weekly, monthly, and annual events?
Well, we would have a staff on site monitoring and ensuring that we provide the appropriate amount of parking spaces for people and they park in the right spots. And if it gets to be, up to the capacity that we're allowed, then we'll turn people away.
So in other words, you're not selling tickets in advance and it's like, hey, it's a monthly, so we're not going to be selling, we're going to sell between 20 to 50 and that's the cutoff. Or some kind of an app, that you would use, like, either a physical ticket or print out or something on the computer or your phone.
Count noses around the pool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we actually haven't ticketed in the past, but if we do get the CUP, it'll allow us to ticket and that'll allow us to be more restrictive.
Okay, good. Because part of the reason I'm asking is just generally how did you propose to do it? And the second one is, in the conditions of approval, one of the conditions says, that annually, like in January, you would be turning in a report and giving the data as far as, what transpired over the past year as far as all these events. And I'm assuming, you'd want to know how many people attended.
Right. Head counts would be a critical part of that data.
Yeah. So that was the second part, or the second reason I was interested to know how you were going to be handling or managing that. So it sounds like right now it's just going to be like a physical head count. If somebody shows up and you've exceeded your allotted amount, then you just say we're full and you have to turn them away.
Or you could have a roll of tickets, I suppose, and hand out tickets as people arrive. And when you run out of 50 tickets or whatever, then nobody else gets in.
Yeah. And I think part of, I guess, a third issue with this would be if the monitoring was kind of planned or thought out in advance, potentially you would eliminate people showing up, parking, and it could be a lot of people because they wouldn't know that you sold out till they got there. Limiting that traffic parking potential,
Yeah, people turned away are creating more traffic.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, great, now what do we do? And then do we go left or right? But, that may or may not happen, but it's just something to think about that potentially could happen and could potentially be through planning ahead of time alleviated. Okay, so those are my questions for the moment, and thank you very much for answering. And
Commissioner Lottis, you have some questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. Kenny, is everything, are the activities that we're talking about, they're mostly outdoors in that back section? Is that correct? Well, other than the extension of the bar, but the yoga classes and the movie screenings and the pop-up dinners and so forth, that takes place in the very back?
Most of the events take place in the pool yard. The weekly events take place usually in the bar itself. And then the yoga is in the pool yard. The screenings are usually in the pool yard. And then the annual events are more so in the backyard and the whole property.
Okay.
Backyard behind the building that's to the south of the pool?
Exactly.
Okay. And the movie screenings are around the pool generally?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of my concerns is the use of amplification, even though you have a sound monitor at the boundary. I mean, it's hard not to have amplification travel. So what events do use amplification?
I mean, the film screenings, when we have music play.
Yeah.
but having it in the pool yard, it's all fenced in and there's a lot of trees around, so there's kind of a natural barrier around the pool yard.
Okay. And how many restrooms do you have? I mean, the report did mention there are restrooms, but are we talking, is there one, or what do you do when you have a bigger?
Registered guests have their own, but non-registered guests
Right.
is the problem.
So there's 3 available for non-registered guests. There's one in the sauna area, and one in the bar, and one in the front lobby area.
Okay. Let's see today. Let me just check. So in this, I think it's the staff report, when they're talking about the conditions, there is a reference to temporary structures. What are we talking about with temporary structures?
I don't know where the reference. We don't usually have any temporary structures. It's only when we have our craft fair, the annual event in December, where just in case it rains, people can put up a tent for the day.
I would think a movie screen would be a temporary structure.
Oh, that may be.
No.
Do you put up a screen? That would be.
Yes.
Got to do something.
Or a white wall outside.
A motel sheet.
Yeah.
And Kenny, can you correct me if I'm wrong here? I just want to make sure that we're clear on the temporary structure. That could include some sort of shade structure for any of those events that you have going on, correct? Beyond the tents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Shade structures like umbrellas, you mean? Or
Umbrellas, the larger structures that are typically 10 by 10 or 20 by 10, beyond, or maybe even slightly smaller than maybe a tent would be.
things like you see at Ojai Day down the middle of Ojai Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, Lucas, can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Sure.
So the DBA, does that, on the sound regulation, does that mean that at no point, no second, no minute of period of time or whatever, no hour period of time, particularly no minute of time, could you exceed the DBA? What is the time period that's based on, that regulation?
So you're talking about when we actually go out and would do a noise monitor and monitor the noise?
I
whether or not
think it's in
it's in
reference.
compliance.
I think it's in reference to the noise standard, where we say the applicant must ensure all noise levels from the approved use must not exceed 65 dB between certain hours. So is that what I'm trying to get? Is that an average of sound levels? Is it, at no point can they exceed dBA 65? What are we exactly?
Normally, the standards are written so that the number that you see is the absolute limit on any instantaneous bit of sound.
Okay.
Is
Because
that right,
sometimes it is an average
Yeah.
measurement, but just wanted to be sure what we're talking about.
Lucas, can you clarify? Or maybe Nikhil knows common usage of noise standards.
It can depend on how it's written. I didn't look
Right,
it up in the
the-
code, so I'm not sure.
We're pulling up the code currently because
Okay.
Very good,
65
thank you.
is the limitation. However, there are short durations.
5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes is that what it says in the code specifically? Then yes, that it's not as soon as they exceed 65 they're in violation. If that exceeding of 65 is for a duration of 5 minutes, then that's post. There's a nighttime provision as well, but that's post 10 p.m. correct?
Okay. But that
Okay,
does,
Yes.
in a technical sense, then it would be possible to go 75 for 4 minutes and then be quiet for a minute, and then 75 for 4 minutes again and be
I don't-
quiet for a minute.
Well, hold on. I don't think that's the way the provision reads specifically. It's if it's over 65 for 5 minutes, then it can't be over, I'm assuming, a certain decibel level, correct? Is it something like no more than 5 over?
But that's how we were. I believe we've interpreted it. If you look at, if the commission looks at section 5-1104, noise standards and limits in the Ojai Municipal Code. There. And it has a chart that breaks out the durational limits, which this is condition 20 in the staff report that requires compliance. So there are durational limits.
5-1104, okay.
Yeah. Well, 5-11.04.
okay, so you could have music or something where you were exceeding the 65 dBA or up to 70 dBA for up to
Short periods,
4.59 seconds, and then it might.
That screaming contest we wanted to have.
Right.
Just kidding.
Okay, I
And
just really want to just understand what's
Yeah.
how the sound is measured. So thank you.
Commissioner Lottis, are you finished or you have?
I'm finished for now. Thank you. And
Okay,
Kathy's Commissioner Nolan's questions answered a lot of my questions also.
great. Commissioner Trent, you have some questions for the applicant
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
representatives?
I do. So, this is for Kenny. Was there a purpose or a reason you guys decided to get a decibel reader?
Well, when we were, in the past 9 years of having the events, we've understood that we have to maintain a noise level of 65 decibels or less. So we got a decibel reader to meet that. I think it was with one of the commissioners in the early days where we promised that we would get one so that we can make sure and go above.
Okay, so okay, cool. So you obviously from your prior events that was brought up.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, do you currently have contracts with off-street parking, or is that something that's be planned with this proposal?
With with those 3 parking lots?
Yeah. Do you have anything now in place?
We do have pending contracts. They have emails that they've agreed to it, and depending on the CUP approval.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to say is outside of this proposal, is there anything current, or is just all parking restricted to the area?
No, with Liv Sotheby's, Eric Wild has always been cool with us letting people.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So just the 2 additional lots down the street, the church, and then the lot across the street from the church would be the 2 additions. Is that correct?
Yes, and also Jeff Becker has always let us use that lot on the Seville building lot as well.
Seville building. Okay. And with these annual events, obviously you're looking at between 100 and 150 people, which could be, quite a bit for that area. Is there, are you anticipating some sort of shuttle service or some sort of off-street parking options? I mean, obviously you have those locations, but they're off street. I'm just trying to figure out how people will get to those parking lots, because there's a neighborhood there across the street from the church, and on the other side they'd be going up and down Ojai Avenue. So just curious.
We would have staff designated to patrol the parking lots and all of the streets to ensure that people aren't disturbing any of the neighbors and parking in the appropriate spots.
And that's just for these one-time annual events.
Exactly.
Okay. Just quick question too. I noticed on the website, looks like weddings are allowed. And is that for the annual events, or is that like weekly too?
Weddings have always been allowed per the city attorney and the planning commissioners, just under our license
Mhm.
as a commercial lot.
Well, yeah, which is fine. I was just curious if they were part of the annual plan or if they're part of that, the weekly events,
No, they're not part of
monthly events.
guests book out all of the guest rooms, so it's basically a private event that they're having at our property.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, can I just follow up on that question, Commissioner Trent?
Yeah, go ahead.
So can weddings include the reception with live music?
Yes.
Okay, and so that is in addition. I mean, how often do you have weddings? Well, probably quite a bit in the summer.
Yeah, we do have them quite a bit. This last year has been off, so, but usually we have,
So many ways.
yeah, we'll have, I don't know, about maybe a dozen weddings a year, or if that. But we definitely deter them from having live music and things like that. People have been doing the silent disco thing with the headphones. So we try to always steer in that direction.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Cool. And then a question. I know that part of the plan is to have this immersion of Ojai culture and to bring in, local folks as well. Do local folks or people not attending the hotel go to the bar today?
They are not supposed to. So, but in the past they did. But now, since we've been, working with you guys to get this approval, we don't, and we're not marketing it to locals. But in the past, they have.
Okay, gotcha. All right, cool. I was just wondering how you were gauging that baseline. Okay, that's cool. All right, and then it sounds like there is a kind of a hierarchy to the parking. Sounds like you're going to start with Sotheby's parking, and then when that's full, then you'll go to the other two auxiliary parking spots that are down the street. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Okay, that answers my questions. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have a couple. Ma'am, you spoke earlier of the local culture and inviting locals in, and people come from far away to enjoy the culture, including the presence of the locals. Is it because with your temporary use permits, which I presume is what you've had all this time for each occasion, do those temporary use permits allow alcoholic beverage sales to registered and non-registered guests? Is that how the locals arrived?
Well, our alcohol beverage control license allows us to sell wine and beer to locals and guests.
Okay. You sell any distilled beverages there?
No, just wine and beer.
Just wine and beer. Okay. About the decibel meter that you have, has that been recently inspected or calibrated by anyone in particular?
We haven't had any events there in the past year and a half, so no. But we will do it.
Before that?
Before that, yes, we were always using it. Yes.
I'm sure that you were. One of my questions would be, where did you actually place the decibel meter? But my other question, I'm a physicist by trade, and I'm used to using a lot of test equipment. And I know that there's a periodic need to inspect and calibrate equipment. Have you ever done that with your decibel meter?
No, we haven't. I wasn't aware of that.
You need to make sure that the readings you get are still accurate. That's all I'm pointing out. Okay. I may have some other questions. I sent a bunch of questions to Lucas over the weekend, and they may once again involve the applicant, but I think they're all for Lucas at this point. So is there anything more that the applicant or representative or consultant would like to say, or any other questions from commissioners? All right. Well, before we start deliberations, are there any more questions for staff at this point, or should we hold those to deliberations?
I apologize. I had just one more pop-up question.
Great, please.
Sorry. How often do you anticipate that the overflow parking would come into play? I'm just thinking of the two sites that are kind of down the street.
For the monthly and the annual events.
The monthly and annual events. Okay, so anticipated every month. Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
The weekly things are smaller groups, and presumably there'll be enough parking on site for that, or at least on site plus Sotheby's.
Yes, on-site and Sotheby's.
Okay. Very good. Well, if we're going to hold off additional questions for staff, then let's open the public hearing. And Sherry, let us know how you want to control the flow here. If we have remote people, if we have people in City Hall, which should you tell us who's coming up?
I think we should start with the people who made the effort to come. So we can start with Mark Tolmett, who
All right.
also submitted a letter by email today. And you have that.
Yes.
Is this on right now, or can you hear me right now?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name's Mark Tolkmet, and I live in the Crestview neighborhood, right at the entrance as you enter the neighborhood. Our house faces the back of the Rancho Inn. And we have kind of a precedent with this establishment that began back in around 2013. And I would encourage the staff to take the time to get hold of police reports. You can get those. I found out today I tried to get them at the police station, but you can't actually get them there. You have to go to the county office. But in the window of 2000 to 2015, I would say we probably had at least 20 disturbing the peace complaints, where the police officers would be called over late at night on school nights when the music was incredibly amplified, much higher than 65 decibels. And I can remember one instance where the sheriff went over there and spoke to what he said was the owner of the hotel, who demanded they would not turn off the music because he had the cup provision. And at that point, he came back over to our residence, and I called him again after 10 o'clock, and he returned to the property. And the only way he could get them to comply with the ordinance was to tell the band, actually, that he was going to confiscate their instruments. So they were in complete, they wouldn't budge at all on shutting down the music in the event. The other thing is the parking issue is out of control. At that point, the pastor of the church there, the St. Episcopal's Church, he was actually pretty much the one leading this campaign to oppose these events. His house is 2 down from the entrance of Crestview neighborhood, and he would complain that he couldn't hold his sermons, and that on Sundays he couldn't even watch his football games. So he was very upset, and he actually at that point refused them parking. But since then there is a new pastor at the church, so maybe they've made agreements with them, but in the past that hasn't been the case. And when they do park, many of their events, people come and they like to pre-party at their car before they enter the event, maybe consume some alcohol or marijuana or whatever it might be. And those containers and whatnot are often discarded and left about. Plus, you're just kind of in your neighborhood, just watching people drink and party right there in front of your house. The other major concern that I have is the lack of restrooms. I can remember shielding my 12-year-old daughter's eyes on several occasions where people had their penis out, peeing in the planters there. And I remember at one wedding, one of the guests was actually in the Jacobs Law Office parking lot, pulling up her skirt and urinating as my daughter watched, which isn't very pleasant to have your kids subjected to. So I think the precedent in the past is that the compliance isn't there. The noise is very outstanding and difficult. I think about things like the Deer Lodge. If I was to buy a house next to that and I didn't like it, that would be my fault. But in this case, the Crestview neighborhood is a very, very quiet, peaceful neighborhood, and we really don't need a Deer Lodge in our neighborhood. I think, am I out of time or? Okay, thank you for your time, and I hope you put some thought and consideration, and I highly encourage you to look at the police reports. There's quite a few out there that address the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We have Shayna Stern Tolkmet.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Shayna Tolkmet, and I live at 320 Crestview Drive, which is in the neighborhood attached to this hotel. I'm going to speak about my experience as a mother and a neighbor and a full-time Monday through Friday working citizen of Ojai. I want you first to understand that we feel quite lucky to raise our children in the Ojai Valley through Ojai Unified Public Schools and within our wonderful Crestview neighborhood. We are the locals for sure. And also, to begin, it's crucial to remember the history of interactions with this motel. And our neighborhood has met as a group and has worked with the Ojai Police Department on several occasions. So please look at those records. Our concerns have not been specifically with the bar, but rather with the conditional use permit and the design review permit that allows for these weekly, monthly, and annual events ranging in size. And, you know, I've heard the numbers tonight for the first time. I heard up to 100 and I heard up to 150. Not quite sure which it is, but that's a significant amount of people for that small space. The music is the problem, and they play the concerts literally facing the neighborhood. So I'm not sure about the decimals. I believe Miss Kenny when she says she's monitoring it, but it sure doesn't seem to me that amount of sound should be able to go all the way to our home. I'm going to tell you about my direct experience. My two children, elementary age, lying in their beds. Yes, their rooms are in the front of the home. On a school night, asking why they can hear music thumping through the windows like their heartbeat. I can explain to you that when you get a coveted Saturday and Sunday off of work only per week, that listening to someone's event for up to 7 hours, and truly it is an average of 5 to 7 hours, I am not exaggerating, of a Sunday just does not feel fair. These events have created much anxiety for me personally. Cannot have family dinner on Sunday evening in our backyard. So despite efforts of shutting all of our double-paned windows as tight as they can go, at the cost of not, having the Ojai air that we live here for and listening to our crickets that we live here for, the noise pollution it carries, it just does. The parking's been talked about. I'm going to let that go, but as the other thing I want to say in my probably one last minute is that as it stands, there's already a venue. I think it's like 340 yards away from this motel, the Topa Winery or Topa Mountain Winery or something like that. That is set away from our neighborhood. They do handle events. They seem to be running that operation with quite a lot of professionalism. And as far as I know, it really hasn't impacted our neighborhood in the same way. I'm just not sure we need multiple event locations so close to our neighborhood. You know, our neighborhood, this is why I live there. We want to hear the kids playing in the street. Our neighbors gather together and we greet each other and we talk. These are the sounds of a neighborhood, not music concerts and bars. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sherry?
Okay, we have Diane Vlasoff.
I'm not sure where that is.
Hold on.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening to me. It's nice to see you. It's been a long time. I am here today to speak as a local. I have lived in Ojai and been happy to be here for more than 20 years. I moved here as a blind military widow with 3 elementary school age children because this was a safe, family-oriented, walkable community. And for the first quite a few years it was. I live at 402 San Antonio Street, and I am the very first house that is at the intersection of San Antonio and Santa Ana, and my house faces on the opposite side of the LDS parking lot. Every single event I hear, I can have my windows closed, I can have my doors closed, and it will come into my house so loudly that you have to yell to be heard over it routinely. I can't have my entertainment at the volume that I would have because I can't hear it, because the sound is so loud. All I hear is, as Shana said, the thumping and the music and everything. It just permeates the whole house. I can't relax and have quiet if I want quiet time to unwind. I can't do that because they're there. Now, it's not just the noise, it's the frequency. When she says it's every once in a while, that's not true. It is Tuesdays, Thursdays. Thursdays is when they have their movie night, and I have car chases and gunshots going off in my house. Like my house is exploding. Like I have a war in my own house. I have, on the weekends, when they have events, their events may only be for a few hours, but they set up way before then. They drop metal, their nails. They have sound checks for hours. You can wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and have them setting up and getting ready for an event that night. And then when it's finally over, it's at least an hour afterwards while they rip it down. They are not respectful of us as a community. My property value, my quality of life, everything has been negatively impacted hugely because of their greed. And I can tell you, my property value, when I sell my house, I'm going to have to disclose this. I'm going to lose big money because of the racket that goes on with these people. I don't have the money to lose. I don't. I'm not a rich LA company that has financed this. And they advertise on the internet with the Shelter Social Club. They advertise. They have already had events. She lied through her teeth. I called the cops on them last weekend. That's not true at all. Everything she says is all la, la, la. I don't know why you people listen to her. She doesn't have any real statistics. She's not telling you, I have commitments. I have potential commitments. It's all nonsense.
Thank you, Diane. We have
Thank
3
you,
other
ma'am.
people.
Sherry?
We have 4 other people in the audience that haven't filled out a speaker's card. Do any of you want to speak in the audience? Did you want to speak? Oh, we also have, Jamie Fleming. Come on up, Jamie.
Jamie Fleming with the Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to spin something positive after the last speakers, and that is, as Kenny said, they've been doing events for quite some time, and I had to deal with, hearing about a lot of the issues. And about over a year and a half to 2 years ago, James Vega and I actually were able to finally get Kenny to meet with us and discuss the fact that there are really good, proper ways to set this up by going through the staff and having this conditional use permit actually officially done. So I'm just happy to see that Kenny is going through the right process. It is my hope that we can resolve the parking issue, make sure that that is handled. I know that the sound issue is obviously very important, and so I think that going through this process is the least big positive that I see compared to before, when we had about 7 to 8 years of just doing events without it being really officially handled. And so I'm looking at that as the positive. But I'm mainly here also to say that for the first item that's up, I think that the patio is something that goes really, is important to me because we're really encouraging restaurants and everyone to start really looking seriously about having things outdoors. And when I've been to the Chief's Peak, I think it's pretty much enclosed. And to be able to now offer their hotel guests or anyone else a chance to have an outdoor area, it's pretty important, I think, for all the years coming now as we deal with these different variants or what have you. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay,
Sherry, we have some remote.
Yes, we have Jeff Gaddis, and hold on. Jeff, you're on if you'd unmute.
Well, hi, I'm the director of operations for the Shelter Social Club. So I'm just here as a witness and just as a support for Kenny and the property and the conditional use permit process. So I don't have much to add to what Kenny's already given you, but I'm here as well just to support us coming together with you to try to see if we can get this done. And I appreciate your time and effort and everyone's comments. And I have respect for, everyone's comments and where they're all coming from. So that's about all I have to really offer at this time.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have Yanni Oshahan. Yanni, you're on, and if you unmute. Okay, evidently doesn't want to speak, so
That's
that's
control
it.
down in the lower left corner of your screen, Yanni. You see a little microphone down there with a line through it. If you click on it, the line will go away and you can speak.
Okay, I think they're just listening, so we're done.
Okay.
Did you want to speak after all? Sure, come on up. What's your name?
I'm Roanne Henry. I'm also a Crestview neighbor. I love my neighborhood. We are a very close, very quiet neighbor. We have 2 churches in our neighborhood, and it's a very quiet neighborhood. I have a couple of questions with regarding to the Sotheby's parking. I thought there were only like 6 parking places in there, so I want some clarification on that. Also, unfortunately, there are no sidewalks by Rancho, so however anybody's going to get to whatever lot, whether it be the church or certainly the Sotheby's, I've seen people walking on Ojai Avenue when they've had particularly the craft event, which is a real public hazard. In addition to, I also have children with people parking in our neighborhood and smoking pot, drinking, whatever that is. I've heard the loud music. It is extremely evasive, and my neighbor Diane relies so much on her hearing. I think that was lost in your statement, but for someone who is impaired in terms of their sight, I just wanted to really underscore that because I'm also here to support my neighbor with a disability. And I just really would like you to take all of this into account, but I also think the parking thing, to really look at how many parking places there are at Sotheby's, how people will get there, all of that, it cannot be ignored. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sherry, any more speakers?
No, you don't want to speak? Okay, nope.
All right. Then we'll close the public hearing with the exception of if any commissioners during our discussion have additional questions for the applicant or representative. Let's start now and go round the horn with, John, go ahead, please.
All right, quick question. Is there any precedence on, with the live music, where the band is facing? Is there back to the bar and facing the neighborhood? Is there back to the pool shed area and facing out towards the street? Just curious on how they're usually set up.
Kenny, can you answer that? You're muted, Kenny.
Sorry. Okay.
Here you go.
Okay, so in regards to where the music is facing for our annual event, we have them in the parking lot facing away from the neighborhood towards Ojai Avenue. And then the monthly events, if we'll have music, will be in the pool. But I just also wanted to say to our neighbors, I'm very sorry for these experiences that you guys have had with our property and our events. My business partner that I had, and I bought him out in 2018, was mainly in charge of the events. So they definitely did get a little bit more rowdy, but we really want to comply with the CUP and ensure that we meet all the restrictions and work with everyone to ensure the safety of our guests coming through and our neighbors.
Okay. John, you had something more?
Yeah. So the annual events, they're facing out toward the street. They're in the parking lot. The monthly events, though, you said they're in the pool.
They're in the pool and they're facing away from the neighborhood as well, towards the bar and towards Ojai Avenue.
Okay. And then as far as the movie nights, those are done potentially weekly. Is that correct?
That would be potentially monthly.
Oh, okay, monthly. Sorry. Where is the the screen? Where's the screen set up? Where's it facing? And then where's the speakers facing?
So the screen is facing the bar as well, towards Ojai Avenue, and then the speaker, it's on the projector, right? So that's facing the screen. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be facing the neighborhood then. The screens. Okay, gotcha. That could be a reason why they're hearing quite a bit of a noise, because the speakers are facing the neighborhood. Just curious. Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Let's go with questions for staff now. Vice Chair Nolan?
I don't have a question at the moment for staff.
Okay. Commissioner Lottis?
Just real quick. So just to clarify, so we're doing design review for expansion of the bar as an outdoor area.
Correct.
Okay. And we're doing a CUP for the event part of this. Is that
correct?
That's the separation.
The events and the inclusion of non-registered guests in the alcohol sales.
Correct.
Oh, okay. That's all I think I have for right now.
Okay. I apologize to drag the applicant back up again, but I did have one more question, and I think it was Jeff who spoke earlier, was to the gentleman that I spoke with when I was on the property, and he didn't know because the paperwork had gone in before he joined the organization. But the staff report referred to expansion of the deck, and I don't quite understand, I guess, what the limitations are on the consumption of alcohol right now, if there are any, other than stay on the property. I understand that the expansion area is 8 or 9 feet to the south from the edge of the existing bar and the 18 feet wide of the existing bar east to west. But I'm wondering, and maybe this is something that Lucas needs to explain to us, but what exactly is done to expand the deck or expand the bar or whatever, other than putting these planters in? Is there something else going on? And if there is, what is the limitation, if anything, that is currently in existence and that would change by this expansion that I don't really understand? Are people not currently allowed to consume alcohol on the deck that's around the pool, but only inside the bar, the roof covered area? And if that's the case, then if you're expanding, are you going to expand the roof to go out that extra 9 feet by 18 feet? That's kind of confusing to me right now. Could you explain? Kenny?
Sorry, I thought you wanted Lucas.
Yes, please.
So we can only serve by the glass inside Chief's Peak, and we have also that little outside area.
Under the roof.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we can only serve by the glass in that area. So that's why we'd like to be able to serve by the glass into an extended informal expansion of the patio. So we wouldn't be extending the roof at all, and we would just have the planters to make the delineation.
Okay, so people that currently, registered guests that goes to Chief's Peak and buys a glass of wine, they have to stay under the roof to consume it?
Exactly.
Okay, so nobody goes out and walks around the pool with a glass of beer or anything of that sort?
Right, exactly.
Okay. And the extension then is just setting off additional area in the deck that's around the pool?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine then. I think I understand. I do have some questions for Lucas, and maybe there turn out to be questions for Nikhil. I'm not sure. Right now, the staff report refers to CUP 85-1 and PC Resolution 85-7. And it also says that the conditions of the CUP continue. I can't, in CUP 85-1, I can't find any permitted uses. In PC Resolution 85-7, all that I could find, at least what was in the packet, was continued use as a motel. So could you enlighten us to the conditions of 85-1 and 85-7 that continue in addition to whatever is decided tonight, if anything?
So just to give a little bit of history regarding and you're speaking to the 1985
yes, sir.
CUP and the resolution that followed that. Unfortunately, that resolution gave very vague and non-descriptive conditions and information. That's just a product of the year and the years in which something like this went forward. By today's standards, we certainly look at this like a fine-tooth comb, right? And that's the reality. However, anytime that you're applying an additional conditional use permit for a site that already has a CUP, you want to make sure to reference past conditional use permits and address and identify and recognize that they still remain in place. The CUP from 1985 allowed for an expansion. That expansion was basically the one room, which went from 16 to 17. So you ended up having an additional room that was approved in 1985.
And just to add on to this, so the resolution and the conditions reference the CUP from 1985 because we don't want the the CUP runs with the land, so it's always going to be on the property unless revoked. And so the reference is to incorporate those conditions which don't remain unchanged under that CUP.
Okay. The PC Resolution 85-7 refers to a staff report. Is there any additional useful information in that we could understand as additional conditions imposed by that CUP?
Unfortunately, that staff report was roughly a paragraph long, so there's not a lot of information.
Okay.
1985 was the staff. The staff is more rigorous today.
Of course, yeah. It's just wondering if there was any other information that we hadn't seen. The admin report, page 2, paragraph 2, says the Chief's Peak Bar is only open to registered guests. Is that a condition in the director's exemption from 2014? Is the director's exemption letter available to give us any additional information?
So the approval from 2014 for Chief's Peak did not address any sort of registered guest versus non-registered guest. What that is really referring to is any sort of outdoor events or outdoor use would require a conditional use permit. This applicant, this property, does not have a conditional use permit, which allows for continued outdoor uses, which is the reason for the conditional use permit you see before you today. In 1985, when there was a conditional use permit, it didn't address registered versus non-registered guests. In 1985, there wasn't a provision that currently exists within our ordinance, which addresses any sort of outdoor use requires a conditional use permit, which is really the reason, which is what Kenny was alluding to earlier, for the alcohol being completely within Chief's Peak and not allowing for that use to be, unless they go through a conditional use permit, to have that use be outdoors.
So the on-site alcoholic beverage sales that are permitted, not CUP permitted, in the C1 zone, that applies to on-site means within that small building, not around the pool. That's why they're asking to expand the area in which the alcoholic beverage sales are allowed.
Correct. It's a two-tiered approach here. It would require the conditional use permit as well as ABC approval, alcohol beverage control approval. So it's a two-tiered approval process.
Okay, and there have been, as the applicant noted, there have been events, let's say, over the years with, I guess, with temporary use permits.
Yes, and there have been events without TUPs. Right. That just to be clear, and I think Kenny's identified that as well. And there have been times where the events have been shut down. There's been citations issued. There's been citations paid. That's not necessarily in the staff report, but those things have certainly happened over the years. We're talking 2013 is more than likely what I was hearing from the community, and that's probably correct.
And to add on to what Lucas said, there were also citations issued in 2019 and 2018. These were the subject of an appeal and then a hearing before a hearing officer in August 2019, where the hearing officer ruled in favor of the city after the city had cited the applicant for not having a TUP and for exceeding the terms of its CUP that was granted in 1985. And hence, and at that time, the discussion with the applicant was that for the applicant to apply for a CUP if they wish to have the additional uses that are identified in this in this current application.
Okay, I guess then perhaps I am more confused than I thought. Did the CUP 85-1 establish the legality of the Chief's Peak Bar or was that established before or after 1985?
That was after 1985. That was in 2014 with the director's exemption.
Okay, so the bar was put up.
Or 2014, yeah, I'm correct. 2014.
Okay, so within the last 10 years, the bar has actually been constructed and used.
Correct.
Okay. But that did not, I'm confused because and alcoholic beverage sales are permitted in the C1 zone. And I'm wondering why we have project-specific condition 2 that includes the allowance for non-registered guests to patronize the bar. Is this to override some prior restriction with the establishment of the Chief's Peak Bar, or what? I don't understand how that would have come about.
That's an excellent question. Let me explain here just real briefly here. So the way in which the parking, and this is really kind of parking driven, the way in which the parking provisions are applied to this motel are really for the guests that stay there, not for the non-registered guests. Those are then in addition to what we're talking about here, and then potentially create a parking impact. In order to address that parking impact, we required a parking demand analysis, which is what the parking consultant, traffic consultant that you're seeing as a part of the attachments to this report has addressed. They've done it in a pretty thorough manner, and that's really a result of going beyond what a typical hotel or motel would allow for, which is registered guests, which is really how our parking addresses any sort of impacts on and making sure that you're addressing the parking on site. Here we're looking at Chief's Peak as well as these weekly, monthly, annual events taking place on site. Parking hasn't been addressed for that. And that's the reason why you're seeing really the analysis done by the consultant and the results of that. And then conditions that go along with that.
Okay. In attachment A, I guess this is the resolution, right? Attachment A? Yes. On page 5 and 6, condition 3A requires parking spaces be available at 530 West Ojai Avenue 7 days a week. That's the real estate property, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And then page 6, condition 5A requires signage designating 3 overflow parking areas during any event, but apparently only one of them is going to be open 7 days a week. And then condition 5H requires weekly events overflow parking, again, only at 727 West Ojai Avenue. So why would the applicant be required to put up signage on weekdays at 2 off-site parking areas where event parking is apparently not going to be permitted?
I think they're probably and I did take a closer look at this. This is one of the comments that you submitted pre the meeting. So there is, so attachment A, page 6, condition 5A, which in kind of a rough, kind of roundabout kind of way, it requires signage designating 3 overflow parking areas during, and I think what I'm having an issue with is any event. And it's not necessarily meant, that condition isn't meant to say each time you have an event, you've got to put out some sort of signage that effectively the Community Development Department, myself, or some designee is going to be approving. What it's basically saying, and we can certainly massage that language, I'm thinking maybe instead of saying any event, saying each subject event. So it's on a case-by-case scenario. Events that are larger, obviously, the annual ones would have all 3 parking lots available. The smaller ones may have either 2. The really small ones would only have 1, obviously. And then that way it would kind of have that blanket aspect of addressing whether it's one parking lot, two, or three. If there's a,
Yeah,
if there's a different way in
condition
which,
5A, I think that would be a good thing to clarify. Yes, thank you.
yeah, reading that over, I agree. It does allude itself to any event. Basically, every time an event happens, you throw out signs, and that seems a little excessive. Really, we're trying to
Well, it could
reduce
even
the
be
amount of
misleading,
signage,
so, yeah.
and allow for those events to be signed correctly. Wayfinding signage, I think, is critical for an event like this, especially when you have off-site parking. So.
Okay. Condition 5B there on that same page 6 implies, at least to me, and I may be wrong, that attendees are at events are not allowed to park in any regular parking spaces on city streets. For example, the west side of Bristol, immediately north of Ojai Avenue, or along Topa Topa Drive or Crestview Drive, or South Bristol for that matter. Is it Bristol there?
Yes.
Bristol. I don't understand how it is legal to prohibit anyone, much less event attendees, from parking in those places. And I don't understand how the city could hold this proprietor responsible for enforcing a rule like that. So I'm just looking for some explanation here.
I won't necessarily tackle the legal aspect. From a conditional use permit aspect, there are conditions or mitigating conditions that in terms of reviewing an application and all of the critical pieces that flow from that application, conditions tend to come from that. These are completely within the realm of conditions for a conditional use permit that we can apply. From a legal standpoint, I'll let Nikhil answer that, but from a CUP standpoint, this is completely within the realm of possibilities and within the wheelhouse of really what a conditional use permit is designed for.
And just to add on to that point, the conditional use permit governs the ability of the applicant to do something that's not otherwise permitted. And the conditions that the city can impose the city has a wide latitude because this is basically a permission the city is granting. And so, yes, there might be some practical concerns about how the applicant intends to police these, but this is a burden the applicant has to bear, not the city. And so, same thing with the parking on streets. Well, one of the conditions, in a conditional use permit, many of the things that are the subject of a conditional use permit, such as, considering the impacts on the local community, it's not uncommon for a conditional use permit to, for example, impose conditions that would limit the impacts on parking in the local community. So, for example, on Crestview and the other in the surrounding neighborhood. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons for having requiring this particular condition is to offset those impacts in the local community.
I'm just, okay, I understand the reasoning behind it, at least to some extent. What I'm trying to understand, and I don't live in the immediate area, but I live nearby. If I chose to drive down Bristol and park on the west side of Bristol right by Ojai Avenue, that is not one of the designated parking areas for this proprietor's events. If I were to park there and then to walk over to Country Club Drive on the north side of Ojai Avenue, cross Ojai Avenue, walk back, I guess on the south side of Ojai Avenue with no sidewalk, and enter an event, how is this proprietor to know where I parked and whether or not it was in one of the designated parking areas that is currently part of this CUP, And how do they enforce that if they don't know where I parked? How would the city hold the proprietor? And I'm not saying I'm either in favor or against having these events or having these offsite parking areas. I'm just wondering in practical terms how the city would hold this proprietor responsible for where people park to attend one of their events, especially if they don't even know if that person is in fact going to attend one of their events. I hope that's not too convoluted a question.
No, I think it's a great question. I think it really returns itself back to the conditions. As these conditions are implied currently, assuming that if there are revisions to these conditions or if there's a decision made tonight, let's just say hypothetically these conditions go forward as is. It is up to the applicant, the property owner, to work through how these conditions are going to be addressed. If in the future, through code compliance, we find out that on a regular basis on Bristol Avenue, they're not using, instead of one of the three or for instance, if it's a weekly event, and we've identified that they're supposed to first use on-site parking and then overflow parking, and instead those patrons of that event are using Bristol parking only, and we get information from a code compliance case, there's potential for citations and there's potential for revocation of the CUP. Now, what we're going to look for is compliance, meaning educate your patrons of where to park, either through wayfinding signage, through social media, through interaction individually with those individual patrons. Now, granted, they're going to have rotating patrons coming through, patronizing the weekly, monthly, and annual events. Wayfinding signing is key. Identifying that through social media, e-commerce is key in ensuring
Absolutely.
that those conditions are met. If these conditions are not met, then we have a potential issue and potentially going through revocation of the CUP. They're all serious. These conditions aren't, we'd like for you to meet them. If we find out that they have 200 plus people attending an annual event, that's a violation of the conditional use permit.
A clear violation, and I wouldn't disagree with you in the least about that. I'm just trying to understand how this proprietor is to be held responsible. I understand put up signage, and I think that's a great thing. But if someone who is not known to this proprietor to be intending to be an attendee at an event chooses to park somewhere other than on site or in one, or depending on the event, 3 off-site parking spaces or areas, how is this proprietor supposed to control that?
Well,
I just don't understand the practicality of it.
On that point, it kind of goes back to the idea of the issuance of a permit. The proprietor has certain obligations they must undertake, and part of it is almost acting as a form of mitigation, is that the proprietor's required, the proprietor can't control the behavior of every person who attends their event. However, what the proprietor can do, and the reason this condition is in there, is to put the necessary information, post the necessary information, the wayfinding signs, post on social media, and this is obviously the proprietor can't necessarily be held responsible for every factual scenario that you can imagine. However, the purpose of the condition really is for the proprietor to run their events in such a way that it doesn't cause the unnecessary impacts on traffic and parking in the local community.
And I agree completely with that. I don't want us to be requiring someone to, as we sometimes say in the physics business, requiring them to provide or find unobtainium as a mineral on the proprietor's property or whatever. If it's impossible to do something, it doesn't seem fair to require someone to do it. And I agree with signage. I agree with posting of notices wherever notices of events are posted. I think all of that's entirely appropriate, and it's nice protection for the neighborhood that the proprietor is in. I'm just not sure that an absolute ban that could result in loss of a permit is logical.
I think
Anyway,
really the key there is education, meaning that the applicant would need to make sure to educate their patrons. Maybe the first patron that comes in says, "Oh, I went over and parked on Bristol," or maybe they're saying, "Hey, where did everybody park? Make sure you're parking at the X location." And they're saying, "Oh shoot, I parked over here. Hey, can you quick go move your car?"
Yeah. Make sure
it's
the
education
parking-
like that. You can't necessarily condition that. You hope for compliance, and if you don't get compliance, then you will that compliance through code compliance or other measures.
Okay. Also on page 6, condition 5B, it implies that attendees at events are not allowed to park in any regular parking spaces on city streets. This is the point that I was making. It doesn't seem legal to prohibit anyone from parking there, much less event attendees. And so I'm not sure that it seems it does seem reasonable to require the applicant to inform attendees of the alternate parking spaces, but I don't see how either the applicant or the city is legally able to prevent attendees from parking elsewhere in spaces that are otherwise legal. And perhaps Nikhil can educate us on that.
Well, that's within our permit authority. It's within our discretionary authority to issue a permit. The people who are attending are there for this event, and so there's designated locations for them to park for these events. And so it is the applicant and the owner's job to ensure that the people attending their event park at the right location. Now, and so this, as part of the condition, this is a condition they have to approve. They have to follow, and so that's where our authority comes from. Is that our authority comes from the code, which allows us to issue conditional use permits and regulate the conducting of certain activities within the city, and so that's where it kind of goes down to. I mean, no one look. Realistically speaking, this is a factual scenario. If they were to get cited for violating the parking regulation, the parking conditions within the conditional use permit, it's a factual scenario. I mean, they have the right to point out that this person, they were unaware that this person was attending their event, but ultimately the burden is on them, and the point from the city's perspective is always going to be mitigation.
Okay. I noticed condition 5C is part of this. It speaks of having people walk along the north side of Ojai Avenue between Bristol and Country Club, crossing Ojai Avenue at Country Club, and then walking back to the subject property. I'm just wondering, is it illegal to walk along the south side of Ojai Avenue between Bristol and the subject property, or between Country Club and the subject property? If so, is all the pedestrian traffic going to be directed to the Ojai Trail and come in through the back fence? Or I don't understand how this rule came about, or how the applicant is supposed to enforce the rule.
So to answer your first question, is it illegal to walk along the south side of Ojai Avenue? No, it's not. Here's what we're trying to accomplish here, staff, and looking at this and trying to find a safe path of travel. And that is along Bristol, that's along the bike trail, and there's an access point along the southern side of this motel that allows for access. So what you're doing is you're effectively allowing for safe travel, pedestrian travel or foot traffic to go in an area that doesn't have traffic interaction. You have that traffic interaction directly along Ojai Avenue. We're taking a very proactive approach in doing this and proposing this as a part of the conditions.
Okay, I didn't see anywhere in the conditions that pedestrian traffic had to be directed to the Ojai Valley Trail for entry into an event via the back gate of the property.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a specific written condition. If I recall correctly, I have exhibits that are included with the resolution, and those exhibits have a visual piece to that as well.
I
It
see.
shows the path of travel, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
Lucas?
Sure.
Sorry. One quick question. Sorry, Steve.
Yes, please, go ahead,
I just
John.
wanted to a question on that piece of directing traffic back through the bike trail. So is that the preferred method of entrance?
Entry into events?
Entry into events?
Yeah.
That is the preferred method, yes.
Okay. Okay. So just me trying to understand. So those are the preferred entry. We're looking for anticipated overflow to happen maybe once a month. So once a month, you'll have people walking down the bike path and into the neighborhood and potentially to the church and then across the street into the other parking lot. Is that right? So on a monthly basis, we'll have people directed back into the neighborhood, right?
Not necessarily within the neighborhood, but along that trail, yes.
Well, they have to. The trail spits out into the neighborhood, and then you have to.
This is
up the
part
street.
of what I had trouble understanding in reading all the conditions, because they talked about directing pedestrian traffic, presumably from the parking on the north side of Ojai Avenue, along the north side of Ojai Avenue to Country Club, and then crossing Ojai Avenue there. Unless I misread it, I just didn't understand that. And if it is the intent of the city in granting this CUP that pedestrian traffic be directed from all three parking lots to the trail and then in the back gate of this property, I think that's entirely proper, at least legal. I think it's a much safer way of getting things done, and it seems a lot more practical to me than having people walk along Ojai Avenue, north side or south side. One is currently required by the condition, and the other is not banned. So I'd feel better if there was some language in here that said pedestrian traffic from all three parking areas should be directed to the Ojai Trail and then enter the events through the rear entrance to the property. If there's a way you can work that in, that would at least, I think, summarize what you've said here. Yes, Vice Chair Nolan.
Yeah, along those lines, I have a little bit of concern if you were directing all the foot traffic to go down the trail, because the trail gets used local pedestrians use it, local bike riders use it, an occasional equestrian rider uses it as well. But I could see
the alternative is to have people walking along the south side of Ojai Avenue at some point.
Yeah, which I've seen, and at this point in time is not. I agree is not safe. Maybe there's just a consideration. Can I mention something else that ties into all what you've been talking about, Stephen, bringing up and discussing with staff? Yes. Is it permissible, if the commission agreed, to put in a condition that required the applicant to create a formalized registration program that included parking? In other words, for example, and I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, and I'm just, whatever they came up with is whatever they would come up with. But most of these people are probably registering online, some app or on a website. There's a given amount of spaces for people to come. Let's say the max is 20 or the max is 150. You do that, and when you register, you get a parking spot, and it tells you which lot you're going to. Then, in a way, it alleviates a lot of this. Well, somebody parked there, and how do you keep track of them? I mean, you still would have to probably keep those conditions in the conditions. Excuse me, but it seems to me it's almost. If it's permissible, maybe it's something that we can't do. It just, to me, if they came in and they had a formalized thing and said, here it is, we're putting it on, it's on our website, this is how we're doing it, we can track the amount of users, we know exactly where they're parking, there's instructions, blah, 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 blah. It would alleviate a lot of problems.
Yeah, it would eliminate the existence of sort of walk-up traffic. People drive by, they see there's an event, they say, that looks interesting.
I'm going.
Okay, I think I'll go take a look.
Yep.
This would not make that possible.
Right. And if you knew and you registered that, oh, I'm assigned parking space 6 at Sotheby's, there's the map that shows me where it is and that there it is, then, people know exactly where to go, and then you tell them the route, whether it's on the bike or the Ojai Valley Trail, or if it's on Ojai Avenue, how potentially they would walk to the site, or the options to walk to the site, whatever that turns out to be.
Yeah, I don't know how the city could prohibit people from walking on the south side of Ojai Avenue. And I also don't see how the city could require the proprietor to enforce such a rule, especially if it's not spelled out in the conditions.
Right. And if you knew through a program, your minimum max amount of people, you sold the tickets, then it's like, then you have to put up on the website, sold out, or on the app, sold out. And everybody is assigned to a parking space. It just seems so much easier.
And if the signage at the 3 off-site lots included an illustration of where pedestrians should go to get into the event.
Yeah, and on the website too, along with here's where you park, there's an area map that shows the parking, the streets, of course, and maybe there's 2 options, Ojai Avenue and the trail, but it would show that as well. Here's where you enter 2 different options for you to walk.
Excuse me, Chair Quillisi.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. William Wyrick would like to ask a question of staff, if you'll allow him to come speak.
He's the boss. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair Quillisi. You're the boss of the meeting, the chair of the meeting, or the majority of the commission. I just wanted to ask staff, I want to make sure I understand one of the conditions, and that is the hours of operation 22B II on page 7 or 9, where it says up to the 12 monthly events, including live music, etc. Does that potentially mean that if approved, they could have every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., that's 12 hours, they could have 12 hours of amplified music every Friday and Saturday and Sunday all month? Or they could potentially have 4 hours every 3 weekdays a week of amplified music. That's 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Is that what that allows?
Yes, there's no restrictions within these conditions currently regarding amplified music.
Or duration of event.
Or the duration of the event.
So they technically could have amplified music 12 hours a day.
In compliance with our
code. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, every month, year-round, according to this condition.
Correct. That meet the parameters for daily weekly, and monthly events.
Right. I just want to make it clear what I was reading. That's all, that potentially, that's what that might mean.
Well, the monthly events, it says up to 12 during a year. The weekly events, obviously, and the annual events up to 3 within a year.
Well, I was trying to understand up to 12 monthly events. Is that 12 per month?
Yeah, so within a calendar month, it would be
Yeah,
up to
so that
12.
means what I said is accurate then. You potentially
Well-
could have 12 hours of amplified music Friday, Saturday, and Sunday every week year-round.
That could be applied to daily events, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I don't understand now. 12 monthly events, to me, means 12 events within a calendar year.
Well, 12 monthly, according to usual language construction, would mean 12 in the month.
12 per month.
And then for the year, is it 3 per year?
3 per year, correct.
Well, that's the annual event on top of
Yep.
the monthly.
Yep.
Correct.
And then
So
the
this is
weeklies on
Independent
top
of
okay.
each
of that.
other.
Right.
So this is 12 events per month per year and 3 annual events per year, and then weekly events per
Right.
every week for the year.
Weekly,
So-
daily, yes.
I was just trying to understand the logic of the language in terms of the duration and frequency of amplified music per month, what it could mean.
When
Well,
this was
also-
described by the applicant, it was my understanding what they said was one event, one of these monthly events per month. So, yeah, that
I'm just going with
definitely
the
needs to be
language that's in the
clarified.
staff report where it says 12 monthly.
And then also the movie screenings could happen each
Well,
week.
that's weekly on top of
Weekly.
the 12 monthly.
Yeah.
Plus the weddings that have been going on.
Plus weddings.
I just wanted to understand what the language actually meant. That's all.
Yeah.
That was my staff question.
Okay,
Thank
so let's put it to the staff. What, under conditions, under 22B, 1, 2, and 3, what's the maximum number of events that could be held?
It's my understanding that with the 12, up to 12 monthly events within a calendar year, it's my understanding that they would allow for up to the way I'm reading this right now, it sounds like it would be 12 per month, but that seems a little excessive. Could I have
I didn't
the
think
applicant
that
come
was
back
the
on because I want to make
applicant's
sure that I
intent,
understand
but
what
let's
that means.
clarify.
That's all I was asking for, is let's be
Yeah.
precise with the language, so there's no ambiguity.
Because if I read,
it could potentially be read 12 monthly.
yeah, because now I'm reading up to 3 annual events within a calendar year, and that seems pretty clear to me that it's
Right.
3.
But it could be up to X number per month would be more clear.
So perhaps I can, just based on the language construction and how the language is used in how that same language is used in other parts of this is the guide to how it should be interpreted. So
But how about, instead of interpretation, we just be very clear?
That's exactly right.
That's fine.
Which I think the condition does need to be made clearer. However, I just want to point out that 22B3 says up to 3 annual events within a calendar year, which by all common understanding and staff's interpretation is 3 events total for the year. Now,
Right.
up to 12 monthly events within a calendar year, if you apply that same
That would help.
construction, which would be 12 monthly events, that's 1 event per month for a year. So that's a
That would
maximum
help.
of
that
12
would
within a calendar
help
year.
clarify.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so
Or-
that language
and-
needs to
But
be.
it
Yeah,
also
in
technically, let's
22
say it's just once per month,
Uh-huh.
that technically would still allow the 12 hours of amplified music on that 1 per month.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or
And another-
in 22B2, if we just took out the word monthly and said up to 12 events within a calendar year, including live music, food trucks, etc., I guess they could all be done in 1 month and they wouldn't be doable again for a year.
But you could say up to 1 event per month.
Up to 1, yes, that would be good.
And I think we need a duration per day.
I do too. Yeah.
I mean,
And then
if we're going to allow this.
And then as long as we're on the lines of clarity, just to be clear on the patrons. So with 1, 2, and 3, it's 20 patrons, 50 patrons, 150 patrons, right, for the events. Does that include the people that are staying at the hotel? Or is that in addition to the people that are staying at the hotel? What does the word patron mean?
I think that's patrons of the event. That's my interpretation, but I don't know. That could include both.
So I guess what I'm saying is it's everybody that is staying at the hotel plus an additional 20 people, patrons.
That's not the way I would interpret it, John. I would say we're trying to limit the size of the crowd independent of how many people are staying at the motel.
Right.
Well, right, but so if you're having an event, you're saying, okay, well, I'm including everybody that's currently staying at the hotel. They're all obviously invited, and then an additional 20 people can show up.
Yeah, we need clarity with what
Yeah,
that
we need
is.
clarity on what that means.
I mean,
I agree.
yeah, I agree too. In theory, you could have all the people at the hotel, none of whom attend the event, and then you could have 20 outside people.
Right, which is parking and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Right.
The 20, 50, and 150, my understanding is it is a limit on the total number of event patrons.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether they're registered or non-registered.
I mean, I agree. That's how I interpret this.
Can we get some language in there that clarifies that, Lucas? Nikhil?
I think we could. I absolutely think we could do that, and that could be within existing or the proposed specific conditions too, or even clarifying that. Actually, probably 2 would probably be the best way to clarify that, because it's talking about motel guests and non-registered motel guests.
Chair Quilisi, I think what the commission then is asking for is a definition of patron included, folded into the conditions. So a patron would be regardless of status, whether they're outside an attendee or a hotel guest.
Patrons could be registered or non-registered guests.
Correct,
Yeah.
but that's a max. So if they hit the cap of 20, for example, for a daily event of patrons, then no more could attend, regardless of whether they're guests at the hotel or not guests at the hotel.
Exactly.
That's what we want. Yeah, we need that.
The city's interest here, I think, is in controlling the size of the crowd, not controlling where they came from.
Right.
Right.
And where are they parking?
And where they park to get to the event.
It's all connected. Yeah.
Okay. Condition 5D.
Chair,
It sounded like this is still on page 6. Condition 5D, as I read it, and I may misread it, it sounds like this condition requires the applicant to ensure the public sidewalk along the north side of Ojai Avenue between Bristol and Country Club be kept in a safe condition. I don't understand how that condition would be enforced. How does this proprietor maintain the safety of city property, namely that sidewalk? You understand? I'm not expressing any view in either in favor or against having all these events. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands what the conditions are surrounding them, the responsibilities of the applicant, and make sure that we're not requiring anything that's impossible.
Yeah. So, Chair Quillison, I think I saw Commissioner Lottis' hand up at one point, but to answer your question in regards to what we're talking about here from a safety standpoint, anytime that I'm looking at conditions, crafting conditions, I'm thinking about a myriad of hypothetical scenarios. In this particular condition, I was thinking of when you're directing pedestrian traffic, ensuring that there is a clear path, meaning you don't have A-frame signs or something out there that you've placed out there that is making it difficult for those patrons to have a clear path of travel from point A, which is the parking lots, to point B, which would be the event. That's really what I was thinking there. It's written generally for that very purpose, to allow for the flexibility of ensuring that there's a safe path of travel.
My concern here is that there may be conditions like the city is working on the sidewalk on the north side of Ojai Avenue and putting up sandwich signs and saying, don't walk here, there's a hole in the sidewalk, or things of that sort that would make it impossible for the applicant to maintain that north side of Ojai Avenue in a safe condition. I would agree with you to say, if it were to say that the applicant is required to inform anyone who parks in these off-site lots to be cognizant of the city-approved pathways to get to the event. And you said through the bike trail, although that could get crowded too. I still don't see anything that keeps people from walking along the south side of Ojai Avenue. I don't think it's currently illegal. In fact, I don't think it's illegal to park on the south side of Ojai Avenue any time of the day. And I'm not sure how we force the applicant to enforce that kind of a rule either.
Yeah, and just to clarify, on the south side of Ojai Avenue, there are areas that specifically identify no parking.
Okay.
That's really kind of in front of Ojai Rancho.
So there's some signage. There may be some red painted curbs that I never saw. I don't know.
No red painted curbs on the south side, but signage, yes.
There is signage. Okay, that's great. Then we should be enforcing the rules about signage if the city has signs up. I agree completely. I noticed there was something about K-rails are preferred. You're talking about these huge concrete structures that require a crane to place them and to remove them?
Not a crane, typically a forklift or something to that matter. And it's preferred that it be a K-rail, but there could be other modes of deterring traffic.
Like little orange cones?
Could be an option. I think it's on a case-by-case scenario. You got to remember, a lot of times with these first-time events, with these conditions as they settle in, there may be a preferred method to deter vehicles from parking in certain areas and pedestrians traveling in certain areas.
And signage would be a big help there. I agree. And
wayfinding signage, I agree, is a huge mode and effort to direct those patrons to a specific area.
Okay, I just don't see in condition 5D, I don't see how it's possible to require the applicant to maintain city property in a safe condition. We said the applicant is not allowed to place signage in that sidewalk area because it might encourage people to stop opposite the property and try to cross Ojai Avenue. Who knows? Something like that I could see, but requiring them to maintain city property in a safe condition is either too vague or it's impossible.
Steve,
my interpretation.
Ensure is the word, which means if they went and looked, they could then contact the city and say, hey, by the way, there's a hazard or something. But it doesn't say that they have to maintain it.
Kept in a safe condition. That's what it meant to me. I may have misinterpreted it.
Okay, maybe I misinterpreted as well. Okay.
Members of the commission, perhaps, I think where the commission is going with this is that, and taking into account Chair Quillisi's concerns, perhaps the language may be better revised to say that any signs placed on the path of travel by the applicant are the applicant is to ensure that any signs placed in the path of travel do not impede or jeopardize the safety of those.
Right, or
in the
create an unsafe condition, right, yes, yes.
That might be a better way of phrasing that. And I think perhaps in also keeping in mind perhaps the general intention, the applicant is to notify the city of any obstructions that on the path of travel that result in the path of travel not being safe for pedestrians.
Yes, yes, that would be the responsible thing for the applicant to do, and I think it's a reasonable condition to put on them. Go ahead, Vice Chair Nolan.
Yeah, I asked a question a couple minutes ago and I never really got an answer, but my question was, is it permissible if the commission so desired to condition a formal registration and parking system as part of the CUP?
Yes, I remember the question and you didn't get an answer.
No, so that's a question for staff.
That would mean no walk-up traffic, if you will.
That's absolutely permissible by the condition by including it as a condition of the CUP that the applicant either create and operate such a system.
Okay.
Continuing on page 6 and looking at page 5 at the same time of the resolution, condition 3A requires parking spaces be available at 530 West Ojai Avenue. That's the property on the north side of Ojai Avenue at Bristol. And then condition on page 6, condition 5A requires signage designating 3 overflow parking areas during any event, but condition 5H requires weekly events overflow parking only at 727 West Ojai. I think that's what was called the Sotheby property, and it's not consistent. Right now, it appears to require the applicant to put up signage on weekdays at 530 West Ojai Avenue and at the church when event parking is apparently not allowed there.
Didn't we handle that earlier where we said at the number 5, the heading opening sentence, during each event rather than any? Does that answer that?
Okay, during each event. Yes, but we still need to fix condition 3A, I think, because.
Yeah.
That condition 3A, that's the parking spaces on the north side of Ojai Avenue at Bristol. Yeah. And that says parking spaces be available there 7 days a week. Yeah. But the weekly event overflow is only at 727 West Ojai Avenue, which is on the south side. So I think we have some requirements that are in conflict here.
And I think it's the confusing language between the 530 West Ojai Avenue and the 727 West Ojai Avenue. The smaller parking lot at 727 West Ojai Avenue is really meant, if I recall correctly, it's meant for the 7 days, to be available 7 days a week. So, and I believe that was what was referenced in the traffic study as well.
Oh, okay. So
Parking demand
3A needs to be corrected with a different address.
Correct. It needs to have a consistent address throughout.
Okay. On page 8, condition 18, it mentions signage at each of the 3 off-site parking locations. Is that temporary signage? Because it's certainly not there all the time, but is that temporary signage for which a sign permit must be acquired separately for each event? Or does this become part of a comprehensive sign program that specifies when the signage is present at each of the 3 locations? I did not understand reading which of those was true, or maybe neither.
Yeah, so the idea is that obviously the signage is temporary, removed after the event. The hope is that the signage that they end up bringing forward for approval by staff is something that's used consistently. However, if those signs do and are modified in the future, that they bring in those revised signs that we can put it in the file for the record.
Then those might be temporary signage, but if they want a consistent signage at 530 West Ojai Avenue, at 727 West Ojai Avenue, and at the Episcopal Church, it's conceivable they could make one set of signs and then use that set of signs over and over. They
Yes, and
wouldn't be temporary.
And that's the idea with this condition, exactly. Only in the event that they actually change the signage are we to review that revision. But the idea with this condition and the intent with this condition is it's one look at the signage and then them identifying, case in point, we just did this for it happened to be a temporary use permit, but we had them provide us with the signage that they were going to use for that temporary use permit. And that was the same signage they used moving forward for future events. Now, if they end up changing that in the future, then we need to see what those revisions look like. But in terms of what we're talking about here, knowing that this is a conditional use permit and there is some fluidity in terms of how those signs can be brought forward, they still need to meet our sign code.
Yeah, and if the signs didn't carry dates or hours on them, then presumably they could be used over and over.
Correct.
Okay. Condition 22A has now specified operating hours. They are consistent with the hours that are noted in an earlier condition, condition 5, I think it is. Are those a change from those allowed by the CUP back in 1985? I think that the 1985 CUP probably did not specify any operating hours, since it apparently had nothing to do with the Chief's Peak Bar or events at this property. But are they consistent with the cited multiple temporary use permits that have been requested and granted to this applicant?
Yes, they are consistent.
Okay.
And consistent with the director's exemption and how they've been operating. Now, granted, this parking demand analysis and traffic study to a certain degree addressed hours of operation. Those hours of operation were included within the packet that you see before you tonight for consideration. I do believe the applicant, and if the commission could bring the applicant back on to identify potential revision, a requested revision to these hours of operation, and maybe even to provide some clarity on these hours of operation.
If that's acceptable to the commissioners, I'd like to have the applicant come back up and clarify.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Please, Kenny, can you come up and help us understand this?
So currently our hours of operation for Chief's Peak is 4 to 10 p.m. And our check-in time for our guests is at 3 p.m. So when our guests arrive, we'd like for them to be able to get a drink. In the past, we have been open from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. So we'd like the flexibility to be able to be open at 3 p.m. On Monday through Friday. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, we open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so in regards to the traffic study, on Monday through Thursday, we would not have any events from 4 to 6 p.m. If we were going to have an event, it wouldn't start till 6 p.m. And so having the bar open from 3 to 6 p.m. wouldn't affect the traffic, because it would just be for our guests that are already staying there and have their allocated parking spots.
Okay, and the condition 22A says the operating hours for Chief's Peak Bar Monday through Thursday is 6 to 10 p.m. That's consistent with what you just told us. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Is that right?
No, so the hours of operation for Cheese Peak currently are 4 to 10 p.m. Monday through Monday through Friday. And on Saturdays and Sundays, it's from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Actually, on Sundays, it's until 8 p.m.
Okay, I was
Okay.
just going to
It
say.
doesn't read anything like condition 22A then.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 p.m. on Sunday is kind of late, yes.
Right.
So we have it until 8 p.m. on Sundays. And we did talk to Lucas earlier today about those hours.
But you'd like to move the Monday through Thursday to from 6 p.m. to 3 p.m. check-in time?
Yes.
And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you said 11 a.m. to 10 p.m.?
No, sorry, Monday through Friday would be 4 to 10 p.m. And Saturdays would be 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. because we have a full house. And then
Okay.
Sundays would be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Well, if that's acceptable to the commission, can you make those changes, Lucas?
Yes,
In 22A?
if
That's more
acceptable to the
agreeable.
commission.
Yeah.
That sounds like a reasonable ask to me,
Yeah, it's
And
more
it's-
reasonable than what's in the, on the condition.
especially on Sunday nights. It's going to be quiet 2 hours earlier. That'll
Yeah.
help the neighborhood.
Yeah,
As a point of, and go ahead, Commissioner Lattis. I was going to make a point of.
Oh, no, go ahead, then I'll ask my question.
Okay. Point of clarification. If I could, from 4 to 6 on Fridays, they're saying Monday through Friday, 4 to 6. 4 to
I thought she
10
just said
p.m.
3
Now,
to 10.
the important thing to note here is from 4 to 6, those are the peak, that's really the peak period for traffic. And our policy identifies within the general plan that no additional traffic shall be identified or provided as a part of a traffic study.
that's right.
I'm just kind of paraphrasing here.
Oh, that's in
What I'd like to
22E1. Yes, okay.
Yeah, what I'd like to have is for the traffic consultant to come on and explain how there isn't going to be any additional traffic impacted or brought forward with these hours of operation.
Sorry, I'm just going to come closer.
Is Mark still around?
If the
Good.
commission is okay with that.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
we certainly need to understand what the real ask is here and what the real practical limitations are.
Yes, this is Mark Mizuta. I'm still here and been listening, obviously, to all this discussion here. And I think the point of clarification for the ask or the revisions here for 22A or the hours are between 4 and 6. As the applicant stated, they want to have the bar open for their guests. And so the guests are existing. That's not any new traffic that would be added to the roadway. Now, after 6 o'clock, the bar obviously would still be open, but then outside guests could come. And so that's where new traffic could theoretically be generated.
So the ask is in condition 22A that it say Monday through Friday between 4 and 10 and Saturday 11 and 10 and Sunday 11 and 8.
I think the clarification would be between 4 and 6 on the weekdays would be limited to existing patrons of the hotel. And then from 6 to 10 would be open to whoever, to the public and existing guests as well.
So
Okay, but
essentially,
between
the bar wouldn't, Chief Peak wouldn't open up to patrons other than registered guests until 6.
That's correct.
Okay, no.
Okay. I'd sure like to see that clarified language
Yeah,
in the condition 22, Lucas. It's very clear that the weekly events are not allowed between 4 and 6,
right.
but it's not clear the consistency of that with 22A, the hours of operation of the Chief's Peak Bar, and the limitation between 3 and 6 Monday through Friday, and between 8 and 11 Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday doesn't matter. Did we get it then? Monday through Friday, Chief's Peak Bar would be open from, you said 3 p.m. until 10 p.m., but it's only open to non-registered guests after 6. And then
Correct.
Saturday, it's open to registered and non-registered guests from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Sundays, registered and non-registered guests from 11 a.m. to 8 a.m., 8 p.m. Is that right?
I think that's what we were talking
It's a
about.
little different than the report. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, well, it's different than the resolution, and that's what we're voting on.
exactly.
So I just want to make sure we get that right.
And Chair
agree.
Quillisi, if I could just jump in here with one, before we
Yes, please.
move on to other, there's been a lot of changes to the conditions and additions from the commission. And I think it's perhaps best practice, given that Lucas is recording all these changes, but it's best practice that the commission make clear all of its revisions, changes, suggestions to the resolution at this meeting, and then having this matter, once Lucas has memorialized those in a format, because we've jumped from condition to condition to condition, has memorialized those in a format with a revised resolution to adopt that resolution either on consent at the next meeting with the possibility of pulling the matter off of consent if there are further issues to discuss, or there's things that Lucas has not has missed, or the things that we need further clarification, or simply passing on consent if the commission is satisfied with the final resolution. But that would be my recommendation, rather than voting on the resolution today because of the number of changes that have gone through so far.
I'd sure like to see not a red line necessarily, but something that clarifies the commission's intent here. And I'm sorry to say I'm not done yet. The condition 22A are the operating hours either the ones that are in the current resolution or those changed hours that are requested? Do they look the same as the documentation, which I haven't seen, about Chief's Peak Bar? Clearly, that is not the CUP and resolution from 1985. Maybe it doesn't matter if we can understand what the ask is right now for operating hours for registered guests and for other than registered guests. If we can see that and approve of it, I guess that's good enough, right?
Yes, we can provide that clarification as
Okay.
Nikhil had referenced earlier. I believe
All right.
Commissioner Lottis had her hand up regarding a question.
Yes,
or a
please.
point of
oh,
clarification.
well, I just want, so do we have, so I don't know if it's city regulation or if it's based on the parking study, but do we have what is the required parking for the bar? And I didn't think we required parking for outdoor.
Correct. There is no required parking for outdoor uses.
So the expansion of the bar does not require any additional parking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'll just kind of say what I'm thinking. I probably don't have a lot of problem with the expansion of the bar, and the bar use by guests as well as non-guests. And what I have trouble with is the scope of the number of events and the frequency. I also have a problem with amplification because even though the DBA, and some of the neighbors alluded to this, the DBA does, measure some sound, but it doesn't measure the lower bass, and it doesn't measure vibration caused by low loud bass. And you can that really travels pretty far. And
Everyone just froze. Did we lose power?
Yeah, we just lose power.
Did our internet just go down?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, give James a call right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there it goes. The internet is gone. Now it's reconnecting.
This is why I hate virtual.
I know, right? We
James, you're on speaker with me and Lucas and Nikhil. We lost power and everything disconnected.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. Now you've got and I'm hearing this weird beep noise.
It's trying.
Yeah.
Some big beeping noise, yeah.
No. So the internet, looks like the server turned off.
Looks like the server turned off.
Yeah, and
Unable to join.
we got kicked off the Zoom, and it looks like our internet is down.
Yeah.
I'm going over to the server.
Are you, I'm not connected to Wi-Fi right now either.
Yeah, so that means the internet is down. Yeah.
Yeah, see, look right here. It's offline.
So we've been kicked off, which means it closed the Zoom out for everyone. My suggestion is if the internet doesn't come back, or if it's going to take us like 45 minutes to get the internet back, because what's that?
I think that's the internet. Something's happening with it.
It's just like,
Because as soon as that calms out,
I heard that noise.
I heard
And then
buzzing noise.
Yeah.
Damn, we were getting so close here.
Yeah, no. So my suggestion would be this. The meeting is continued as a result.
Everything's going on now.
She must have turned it back on, turned it back off. Continued due to a disruption.
In connection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Call
I
back.
have all the commissioners' names on my.
Our video feed probably cut off as well.
Yeah, we lost.
I'm gonna go get all their phone numbers.
No, I've got Quillisi. I'm giving her a call right
Ron,
now.
you'll call Quillisi directly?
Yeah, I'm calling him right now.
And maybe can you email, would we have, if you have the, you gotta notify the applicant as well.
Yeah.
But if, maybe Quillisi can send an email to all the members of the commission for us, because because he is technically the chair. So you want to put him on the speaker and I'll tell him what to do.
Hey, Steve, what's going on?
Hi, it's Lucas and Nikhil here.
We've lost the feed from the council chamber.
Exactly, because the internet has gone out in the city hall.
Ah, okay.
So
You can dial in, right?
well, we have no internet, we have no screens at the moment. So
Yeah, we're kind of dead in the water here.
yeah, and it's gonna. We tried doing the fix of turning it back on, turning it back off, and it did not work. It just turned itself back off again. So my recommendation would be that the meeting is continued as for technical difficulties. James said it's going to take him a little bit of. James Hahn said it's going to take him a little bit of time to get here, and then a little bit of time to figure out what's going on. So.
Okay, did you all hear that? Oh, okay, the internet's down at City Hall. That's why we don't see them in the gallery view anymore. And they can't really conduct business there. They can't see us, and we can't hear or see them. And Nikhil is suggesting that we continue this to a date certain and finish the consideration of this issue. I think that is probably the only practical thing to do at this point.
Yeah, well, because of the disruption, it's a disruption external to, the city's business. It's literally power has gone out. So the matter would then be, I guess, we're technically still. I mean, unfortunately, I think even the public is now cut off and can't join. So I think we would need to, Steve, if you want, you can just, with the consent of the commission, declare that this all items that are currently agendized for this meeting are continued to the next meeting, which is September 15th.
Well, no, we were supposed to talk about that as well tonight. Potentially having a special meeting on the 8th.
Yes.
In lieu of the meeting on the 1st of September, I don't know how many of you have spoken with Lucas about this.
We can still schedule it.
I have surgery on the 1st of September.
Yeah,
I can do that.
It's eye surgery and it's not serious, but I don't know that I could attend a meeting that evening.
So,
but if we had another meeting in lieu of the 1st of September, if we had it, say the 8th of September, then we could continue this item to a date certain. No additional noticing would be required. Is that right, Nikhil?
Well, we'd have to post on the city website, and once we can access the city website, we'd have to post this. And
but you wouldn't have to notify anybody who lives within 300 feet or whatever.
Correct, because it's being continued. It's being continued as if the meeting has just never ended. It's just being continued. So.
Right. Okay. So I see Mark and Kenny are still signed in and can talk to the rest to the four of us, but you guys are cut off. I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
What do you think, commissioners? Shall we adjourn the meeting at this point and continue all items? First of all, is it acceptable to the commissioners that we have a special meeting on September 8th in lieu of the regular meeting on September 1st? Okay, then Lucas, we're agreeable on having the meeting on the 8th. So shall we, by unanimous consent, I guess we can't even ask Sherry to take a roll call.
We can't, yeah.
She's cut off.
All that is.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, Lucas, if you get your speaker on, then Sherry will know that we're going to declare this meeting adjourned until September 8th, and you'll do the necessary paperwork to make that happen.
No, September 8th.
September 8th.
Yeah, due to technical difficulties.
Right.
Right.
And
the
there,
technical difficulties.
once we can post on the city's website, the city will be posting a notice of this.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
And Kenny and Mark, you got that? You're still on with us, I think. Okay. So we'll reconvene this and continue asking questions on September 8th.
Yep.
all very much. I record the time as 8:32, is that right?
Yep.
Yep.
8:32 p.m. We're adjourning with all items continued to September 8th.
All right. Thank
Okay,
you.
Lucas?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
No way to predict that. There's quite literally no way to predict that. I don't know what's wrong with the, to me, that seems like there's something bigger wrong with it because, she turned it back on, turned it back off, the normal, you know, what you do with tech problems.
I know.
And, it turned itself off again.
I know.
So,
Call
yeah, tell him,
James Vega, not James.
oh, yeah,
James
if,
James
I,
Swan's gonna be down.
do you mind if I listen on that one?
Yeah.
'Cause he'll probably ask me too, what are we doing? I texted Matt. I think he's in another meeting right now.
Is he?
Yeah. He's in Calabasas right now. So.
Hey.
Hey, James.
Hey.
Hey, have you been listening to Planning Commission?
Yeah, I talked to James.
Huh? Okay, so I just got off the phone with Quillisi, and we've continued all matters to a special meeting for September 8th. Did you hear that?
Where's your PowerPoint? Was that for which meeting? Was your PowerPoint for this item?
No, it's for the second item.
Oh.
Can
you hear me?
Hey.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
So September 8th, why so long?
We don't have a quorum for the September 1st meeting because we're down to 4 members, and I think Steve is going to be out, and I believe there's uncertain whether we will have a quorum of enough members.
All right, well, I guess, it's not like it was gonna come back anyway, so I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, my recommendation was for it to come back with the changes made.
Yeah.
So given, I think at this point, the issue really is that we need to post a notice saying that technical difficulties, the meeting has been continued to a special meeting. We probably need to post notice of that special meeting because of the special meeting rules. We need to post notice of that special meeting. I would just do it now. I mean, we have, it's gonna be basically the same agenda, right?
Yeah.
So we should just go ahead and post it.
We have more items.
Well, wait a minute. That's true. We have 2 more items that would be going for the special meeting on the 8th. So even though all those items are being continued, we could still add
Yes.
items to the agenda.
As long as you meet the agenda deadline for the special meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
So, yes, we could do that, yeah.
It's just gonna be piling more stuff onto the planning commission for that
Yeah.
meeting. You said, why so late or why so long? You're thinking, why couldn't we just do this the next day or the day after and find a bit?
Not really, just that seemed like a really long timeout, but I forgot Ulysses traveling and they're down one already, so.
Yeah, I mean, the first was a possibility.